Hi, I'd like to share the seventh lesson that we've prepared from the book of Proverbs. And the topic is wealth, how to use our wealth to God's glory. The book of Proverbs has a lot to say about wealth and money and sacrifice and generosity and taking care of the poor and savings. And so let's look at some of these verses together. The first thought that stands out in the book of Proverbs is this contrast between generosity versus greed. Generosity versus greed. These two ideas are opposite ends of a spectrum, and they're juxtaposed in the book of Proverbs, that you can either be generous or greedy. It says in Proverbs 22:9, the generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. Proverbs 11:24 through 26 says, one man gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. A generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. People curse the man who hoards grain, but blessing crowns him who is willing to sell. So a good question is, how do you define and measure generosity? How do you define generosity? The second thought that stands out in the book of Proverbs is the idea that we need to be restrained in seeking our wealth and seeking wealth. Look at Proverbs 28:20. A faithful man will be richly blessed, but one eager to get rich will not go unpunished. Proverbs 23:4. Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Have the wisdom to show restraint. Living a balanced life. Proverbs 14:31. Whoever oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honors God. So a good question is, how much effort should we put into gaining wealth? How much effort and time in our schedules and in our lives should we put into gaining wealth? The next big thought is saving money. Proverbs 13:11 says, dishonest money dwindles away, but he who gathers money little by little makes it grow. And in our banking and capitalistic society, the idea of saving and compound interest really can multiply money. Proverbs 21:6 says, a fortune made by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a deadly snare. Proverbs 22:7, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. And so we need to save money and not get into debt, if at all possible. There are things you can get into debt because of the ability to put that item up as collateral, like your house or your car. Those are things that may be worthy of debt, but other things we need to not be enslaving ourselves to a lender. So a good question is, how important is savings in creating wealth? How important is saving in creating wealth? Another thought from Proverbs is God can bring wealth. God can bless you with wealth. Proverbs 8:18 says, with me are riches and honor, enduring wealth and prosperity. That's what God claims. Proverbs 11:28 says, those who trust in their riches will fall, but the righteous will thrive like a green leaf. Proverbs 12:14, from the fruit of their lips people are filled with good things, and the work of their hands brings them reward. So a good question is, how does God bring prosperity to us? And the next thought from Proverbs is wealth can bring difficulty. It can be a challenge. Proverbs 15:16 says, better a little with fear of the Lord than great wealth with turmoil. Proverbs 27:10, a man's riches may ransom his life, but a poor man hears no threat. Proverbs 10:2, ill-gotten treasures have no lasting value, but righteousness delivers from death. Proverbs 11:4, wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. So ask yourself, what are the challenges of having wealth? There are challenges that come from being wealthy. The next thought from Proverbs is wealth requires hard work. Proverbs 14:23, all hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Proverbs 18:9, one who is slack in his work is brother to one who destroys. Proverbs 12:11, those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. Proverbs 21:17, he who loves pleasure will become poor. Whoever loves wine and all oil will never be rich. So, the question is, how important is hard work and the avoidance of getting rich scams, get rich quick scams? Proverbs also tells us that we need to pay cash versus borrow if possible. It says Proverbs 16:26, the appetite of laborers works for them, their hunger drives them on. Proverbs 22:26 and 27, do not be a man who strikes hands in pledge or puts up security for debts. If you lack the means to pay, your very bed will be snatched from under you. Proverbs 11:15, whoever puts up security for a stranger will suffer greatly, but whoever refuses to shake hands in pledge is safe. So what are good motives for gaining money and gaining wealth? What are some good motives and good reasons? Another thought from Proverbs is fairness in business, being fair, being honest. Proverbs 11:1, the Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favor with him. Proverbs 13:23 says, an unplowed field produces food for the poor, but injustice sweeps it away. Proverbs 16:11, honest settles and balances, honest scales and balances belong to the Lord. All the weights in the bag are of his making. So just being fair and honest, and a person of integrity in business. Proverbs 17:3, the crucible for silver and the furnace for gold, but the Lord tests the heart. So, how important is it for us to do business with honorable people and in an honorable way? Discipline brings wealth. Listen to this, Proverbs 10:4, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Proverbs 12:24, diligent hands will rule, but laziness ends in forced labor. Proverbs 12:27, the lazy do not roast any game, but the diligent feed on the riches of the hunt. Proverbs 15:27, the greedy bring ruin to their households, but the one who hates bribes will live. How do you define greed? And then how do you define diligence? What's the difference? Proverbs also teaches us that wealth and righteousness need to go hand in hand. In Proverbs 12:25, the righteous set their hearts on contentment, but the stomach of the wicked goes hungry. Proverbs 14:4, where there are no men, the manger is empty, but for the strength of an ox come abundant harvest. Where there are no oxen, the manger is empty, but for the strength of an ox come abundant harvest. So you need the right tools. Proverbs 15:6, the house of the righteous contains great treasure, but the income of the wicked brings ruin. Proverbs 16:8, better a little with righteousness than much gain with injustice. So how important is contentment? And then we need to give to the poor. Proverbs 17:5, whoever mocks the poor shows contempt for their maker. Whoever gloats over disaster will not go unpunished. Proverbs 22:16, he who appeases the poor to increase his wealth, he who oppresses, the poor to increase his wealth, he who gives gifts to the rich, both come to poverty. Proverbs 18:23, the poor plead for mercy, but the rich answer harshly. Proverbs 19:7, the poor are shunned by all their relatives. How much more do their friends avoid them? Though the poor pursue them with pleading, they are nowhere to be found. Proverbs 19:17, whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will reward them for what they have done. How important is it to give to the poor to gain God's blessing? And then the next thought is bribes and dishonesty versus integrity with our wealth. Proverbs 17:8, a bribe is seen as a charm by the one who gives it. They think success will come at every turn. Proverbs 17:23, the wicked accept bribes in secret to pervert the course of justice. Proverbs 21:6, a fortune made by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a deadly snare. Proverbs 18:11, the wealth of the rich is their fortified city. They imagine it a wall too high to scale, which is a false hope. Proverbs 19:16, a gift opens the way and ushers the giver into the presence of the great. So how important is it to be honest? And then how important is it to give gifts to others? So just to wrap up, a few thoughts about wealth. Accumulation of wealth is not evil, but neither is it the most important thing in life. We can increase our wealth by hard work, careful planning, generous giving, and fearing God. And wealth pursued from the wrong motives or in the wrong ways will not last. We need to recognize our wealth comes from God and honor Him through sacrifice. I hope this lesson is a blessing to you. I'm so grateful to be able to share these thoughts with you at this time. Have a great week.